This is an Audio Wool original.
This episode of Frightday is brought to you by Spring Heel Jack Coffee. You need great. Jack delivers. And by me, Ken Beagle, and my new show, The Mind Summit. Do you have goals? Do you have dreams? If the answer is yes to one or both of these questions, the Kent Beagle Mind Summit is for you. Find it right here on the Audio Wool Network.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. If you'd like to support us, go to patreon.com/frightday.
Learned a lot about saints this week.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's fun. Saints, huh? I'm very curious about this one. This is one that I didn't look into, so I don't really know much about it other than the name.
That's okay. It's going to be great. You're going to have fun rolling with it.
I like to roll with it.
I don't want you to worry at all.
Now,
a very good conclusion.
Now I'm worried.
Oh,
What?
no, don't worry. Don't worry at all. I've got my local hard cider that I'm finishing. And
Oh, no.
big glass of wine that I'm starting.
You're double fisting?
Uh-huh.
Oh, my God. Cider Kelly.
Also, I'm eating a blue macaroon.
It's macaroon. It's not macaron. There's no difference in the way you pronounce it. It is Frightday. I'm your host, Byron. And stop me if you've heard this before. Growing up is hard. But it can be quickly compounded when your loving parents make the decision to split up. Maybe a change of scenery for the summer would do you some good. Sun, brews, babes. Or maybe an evil Vavitch with creaky cracky bones will crawl in next door and make things a hell of a lot worse. We'll talk about that tonight as we review the Pierce brothers, Brett and Drew Pierce's The Wretched. And earlier this year, Canadian rapper Drake gave us the Tuesday Slide. 2018, a kid with a backpack showed us flossing isn't just for our mouths. 10 years earlier, Bay had all the single ladies on the dance floor putting rings on it. Cha-chas were slid, tootsies rolled, Humpties danced, the Macarena, the boot-scootin' booty.
Chacarone.
It's not a real dance. The YMCA, even the moonwalk, which we'll be covering in the first week of Moon June this year.
That would be amazing.
All these dances are horrific in their own right, but I can only assume that these forms of getting down resulted in minimal casualties. Surely nothing like the dancing plague of 1518, which we'll talk about in this week's edition of Kelly's Cryptids and Conspiracies. I'm joined tonight by Kelly.
Hello, hello.
And Sam can't make it because he's working late at the marina.
Oh, he is. Yep.
Burning the midnight
He is
oil.
trying to work his way up to skipper level.
Just a polo wearing a full-grown man working at a child's job?
No, he refuses to wear polos.
Oh, okay. Well,
I think that's why it's taking him so long to advance.
he's a Maxinista. He would never wear a polo.
I guess that's true. Do you know that they have done this
No.
weird thing where they like shut down orders at a certain point in the day? They're like, sorry, we've met our maximum order capacity for the day.
What are you talking about? At TJ Maxx?
Yeah, because obviously their stores aren't open, but you can
Yeah.
order online.
Okay.
But online, at a certain point, like they only take a certain number
this
of
is
orders
bad.
a day.
This is
like
bad
right now on the
again.
website, it says, unfortunately, we have reached our order limit for today.
Stop looking there. Because you should be going to Frightday.com. It's the hub
I'm
for
always there.
all kinds of great stuff. We have a new writer. I want to welcome Danny West. He's going to be doing weekly Throwback Thursday reviews on the site. Last week he did Basket Case. This week, Demons. One of my favorites.
Awesome.
Really
Welcome,
excited.
Danny.
And I mean, the rest of the gang, I just put
It's
up.
all for you, Danny.
All right, doing an Omen quote.
Pretty good,
The,
huh?
the writer's room, they just put up their episode, What is Horror? And I'm not going to spoil
Can we
anything.
please play that song, What is Love?
No, what's love got to do with it, Kelly?
No, not that one. The Night at the Roxbury one.
That movie doesn't play well anymore, does it?
I mean, I wouldn't know because I haven't watched it since it first came out.
Well, they're always like dry humping people, making unwilling participants the meat in a sandwich.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. That was good.
No, it's not good. It's not appropriate.
Well, no, I mean, it isn't appropriate.
No.
It's definitely Me Too-y, but...
Those two-y. Also at Frightday.com, we have been remotely covering the Chattanooga Film Festival. So there's going to be reviews for Homewrecker, Being Natural, The Wanting, Attack of the Demons, and Scare Package, which is a horror anthology that I caught at Telluride. It's really, really good, and it's going to be out soon on Shudder. Hopefully we'll cover it on the show. It's been a while since we've done an anthology. So
It has been a while. Most of them suck, so...
I mean, I can tell you, this one is good. I'm really excited for it.
Okay, is the best one first or last?
It is all good.
Yeah, well, obviously bullshit.
All right. Frightday.com. Also, I want to say thanks for hanging out with me on Twitch and watching me play a little Jenny LeClue Detective Vu.
Hey, did you do any better this time?
I did actually play the game, which is interesting because the only thing different is you weren't there. I mean, it seems like maybe without the distraction of you, I actually played the game, which was a lot of fun. Shout out to Joe Russ, one of the creators of the game, who's apparently actually a listener of the show. So thank you for creating a cool game. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And then on Twitch, we actually debuted last week's episode as well.
Which is really fun.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of technical issues I was having. Usually we premiere things every Sunday at 8 p.m. on YouTube. I couldn't get things processed in time, but I was able to do it on Twitch, and that was a lot of fun. There was people in the chat there, so if you want to listen live, I think we're going to be debuting either on Twitch or YouTube, 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, Sunday on either Twitch or YouTube. We'll figure it out.
Okay, that's 7 p.m. for all of you in California, and that's 10 p.m. for all you on the East Coast. And
Great
England and Australia, I'm sorry, but I can't do the math because of the changes with daylight savings. I think you guys are somewhere. England, I think you're like 8 hours ahead, maybe 7 hours ahead, something like that. Get up early in the morning.
I'm just having a lot of fun. All these new ways of interacting with the listeners. So.
Oh, that's good because I'm having a lot of fun researching.
Moon June, right around the corner, obviously covering the history of Michael Jackson's famous dance, the moonwalk.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if I'm going to do an episode on that, I'm going to do an episode on Michael Jackson conspiracies. But
that sounds like that actually isn't a bad idea. But
I know it isn't.
Like maybe like a 9-parter.
Yeah, it would be extensive.
Any teases for what we're doing? I know you mentioned a little bit about one of them last time we were on the show.
Nazis. Everybody hates Nazis. Some of you may be mad at me for saying negative things about Alex Jones. Some of you may be mad at me for yelling at Plandemic. None of you are mad at me for hating Nazis.
If you are, I guess you can kindly fuck off.
Yes, exactly.
To our show.
So yeah, we're gonna talk about Nazis on the moon, folks.
That's where they went, right?
Well, obviously. Well, I mean, not all of them. Some of them went to Antarctica. But we've talked about that already.
And then we lined up something very secretive. Not sure if it's 100%, but it's pretty. It's pretty well set up. This is one of those big ones.
It's big.
A huge get that's going to be happening sometime in June as well.
I've been wanting to do this for years, literally.
This is big, and it's not a seance with Art Bell. It's something else.
That would be bigger. No offense to this potential guest, but that would be bigger.
Very exciting stuff. Much to look forward to.
Although she might be able to orchestrate a seance with Art Bell now that I think about it.
Little spoiler with the gendering there. All right.
Yeah.
Kelly, what have you been up to this week?
Well, let's see.
One last thing.
Damn it.
I guess
I knew you weren't going to let me talk, actually.
Well, right now would be a good time for me to talk about a new segment that I like to call Staff Picks.
They say so much, but they never tell you if it's any good.
Werewolf movie with E.T.'s mom in it?
A howling horror straight ahead.
Like this week I get to talk about Labyrinth?
No. This is a horror program, and I'm going to start being a little bit strict.
A lot of people feel like Labyrinth is kind of horror-y.
Well, let's be real. I do not think that it is I'm very startled by it. But you know me and puppets. I'm not really a big fan.
You don't like
of
puppets?
That.
David Bowie's a little bit off-putting in that one. I think it really qualifies as horror for a lot of folks.
Staff Picks. For anyone who remembers the time when you could go to, it's a building full of physical media that you can rent.
I do kind of miss that, I'm not going to lie.
Video rental store. One of the first things you would see when you came in the door at all the good stores, I guess, would be a wall with a sign that says employee picks or staff picks. They're films selected by the workers of the establishment, people with great taste. And
Well, actually, I'm going to go ahead and interrupt there because the store that I went to, I came to realize that some of those staff members had awful taste. Some of them had great taste. And so you knew which ones to listen to and which ones not to. That's kind of like this show. You should probably just write off anything that Sam or Byron suggest, and you should definitely listen to what I suggest.
I don't know about that. It is nice, though. It's almost like you establish a relationship with the person whose taste you match with, you know? Every week on the show, we try to talk about things that we've seen recently, and sometimes those things that we watch just don't really matter at all. So in lieu of doing that all the time, I would like to start highlighting some movies that I may not have seen that week, but something I think needs and deserves more attention. It just so happens I did watch this movie this week, so it kind of goes against the entire new philosophy of it, but it did just come to Shudder, a 2013 film called The Dirties.
Can you hear me? 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 Sorry. We're making a movie. Okay, action. You know what they call a quarter pounder with cheese in France?
They don't call it a quarter pounder with cheese?
No, you idiot. I should be doing this whole thing as Bane. They call it Royale with cheese. Our movie is about two students in a school who get bullied by this gang called the Dirties, and so they decide to take revenge on them. They snipe them from a long way away.
Get dirty with the green bandana. Should be a tough show.
Killing them? Guys, just want some things, okay?
And then there's a scene where the Dirties are doing cocaine, and we jump in with guns, and we're like, die!
You guys gotta make some changes.
What did Muldoon say? You can't make a school shooting movie? If we made a movie where we went with real guns and actually killed only the bad guys.
Yeah, that's what we did in our movie.
But if we actually did it, just blew them away. Get up!
I'm sorry.
You know, Larry, we're coming to school with guns to kill you.
You're dead. You're dead. You're dead.
Why don't you go tell my mom?
Mr. Johnson, your son's got a bunch of pictures of people on the wall that he thinks he's gonna kill later.
What a wicked movie.
How you act like this all the time now.
This is real. I'm being real.
I don't think it's funny. So if I don't think it's funny, who's it for?
So it's directed by a guy named Matt Johnson. It's a found footage film. Matt Johnson, he went on to direct a film that I don't know if you watched it, but you were extremely interested in it. Another found footage film came out in 2016 called Operation Avalanche. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes. Speaking of the moon.
CIA agents infiltrate NASA to expose a potential mole. So it's like a 1969 styled found footage film. It was beautiful. But before that, there was The Dirties, Matt Johnson's directorial debut. Two guys in high school, Matt and Owen, bullied by a group of cool kids that they call the Dirties. They're given the assignment to make a video project for a class.
Tell me it's a snuff film.
Nah, I mean, listen, the plot of their movie involves the violent death of the cool kids in their school. Obviously, for that reason, the teacher makes them scrap the idea. They're huge fans of cinema, films like Being John Malkovich, Pulp Fiction, Usual Suspects, all of those cliche favorite movies from the early 2000s.
Stop saying cliche. Those are all great movies.
They're fine movies, but if any one of those are anyone's favorite films, then you're a boring person.
Honestly, Usual Suspects is one of my favorite films, so F off.
Matt becomes increasingly delusioned and decides that he wants to film the actual death of the Dirties. It becomes a found footage school shooting movie, but it's really interesting, very low budget. I think it was $10,000 for the production, and they put in another $30,000 after the fact for the music rights of the film. It cost 3 times as much as the actual shooting budget, but this movie is very, very interesting. It's also pretty funny, but it doesn't take the subject matter lightly. Highly recommend it. It's now available on Shudder. Check it out. Rent it.
Rent it?
Well, I'm trying to think of some sort of catchphrase to say at the end of staff picks, but what would someone working at a video store say?
I mean, they would probably say rent it. Be kind, rewind.
All right, so I'm not gonna do any of those, but I rewatched it again this week, and I think you guys should check it out.
So a few things. I am rewatching season 2 of the fabulous Netflix show Dark, which was actually picked up. It's a German show, and I think it was like a German web show to begin with. Pretty sure.
Is that right?
Yeah, it is phenomenal. Yeah, I can't even really describe it without completely ruining it. And I know we've talked about it before on the show, but I'm rewatching season 2 because A, it was really confusing, and B, we just learned that season 3 is going to come out at the end of June, and I want to be ready because season 3 is the last season, which is a super big bummer, but it's going to be interesting to see how they wrap up this story. I have been rewatching that, and that definitely counts as horror, Byron.
Okay, what is it? Because it's like paranormal, or
I can't tell you that without spoiling things.
When do things get spoiled?
I would say by the end of the first season, you would understand why I can't really talk about any of it.
All right,
you would really like it, Byron. However, it will be a challenge for you because it is not a passively watchable show because it is subtitled. It also is very confusing. You
I
need,
have to watch it?
Yeah, you need string boards for sure.
I don't
Okay,
know
so
if
I'm
I
really
like that.
excited about that. Also,
Is there a dubbed version?
I mean, there are stupid people, so there's always a dubbed version for stupid people.
Oh no, Netflix just dropped another thing I have to watch now.
I shouldn't say
Sorry.
that. There are also visually impaired people who deserve to have the dubbed version. But
Fair,
then there are
very
stupid
safe
people like
statement.
you who have perfectly functional eyes and refuse to
Yeah, I
read.
just got a lot of stuff to do. And I read a lot of books. Come on now, relax.
What just dropped on Netflix?
Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich.
Oh, yeah, I can't do that yet. I'm too close to it. It bothers me too much. Also, obviously, he didn't kill himself. Obviously,
Yeah.
it was not the Clintons. Come on, you morons. You stupid goddamn conspiracy theorists barking up
Wait,
the
so
wrong
who are
tree.
you saying did it then?
Okay, so our sitting administration would have much more cause to do it than Clinton.
It's a long list, though.
Yeah, the list of potential suspects it's absurd. It's absolutely
Yes.
absurd. It's like if Alex Jones got killed, how are you going to figure out who did that? I don't know. Everybody hates him. So who knows?
We're gonna get that was the. Come on, Kelly.
Okay, I am so sorry, but if you think that Alex Jones is a good person, I don't want you listening to me. Period.
Oh, but you.
No,
come on
really,
now.
I really don't, because he is everything that is wrong with conspiracy theorists and with those who are interested in investigating things outside the mainstream. He is a bad human. He hurts people. He is mean, very frumpy and dumpy, and has admitted he would cannibalize you. So if you're
That was satire.
if you're listening to him and you like him, I don't care if you listen to me, because I don't like him. He's a bad man.
I think he's very funny.
Bad man.
And he did great work at Bohemian Grove.
Yeah, like 40 fucking years ago. Anyhow, the other thing that I am very excited about, speaking of Netflix shows, most of you know that my number one thing from last year, my number one media, was Marianne, the series on Netflix. Again, needs to be watched with subtitles. Absolutely terrifying. But the creator of that show, Samuel Bodine, and I'm probably pronouncing it wrong because he's French. Also, Byron, P.S., I just looked it up. They are pronounced differently, but we were both pronouncing the Macaroon one wrong.
Oh,
it's
right.
actually
We're
called
back to-
Macaron.
Macaroon Gate, huh?
Macaron,
All right.
because ooh is not a word in French.
Samuel Bowden.
Yeah, Bodine, he is going to direct a new horror movie called Cobweb, which is super exciting because I don't know anything about it. I'm not going to read any spoilers, but it was on the Blacklist in 2018. It was number one on the Blood List last year.
The Blood List? Is that a thing?
It is a thing. Yeah, it's
Wow.
like
For
the
horror
Blacklist, but for
scripts?
horror. Yeah, how did you not know
Unproduced
that?
horror? I don't know. I was busy probably reading a book about, I don't
Wait,
know.
what?
What? I've been reading nasty books. That sounds like pornography.
Yeah, it did.
I've been
It really
reading
did.
been reading about the Bath Massacre. Yeah.
Oh, well,
I mean,
speaking
God.
of reading nasty books while you're at it, because I got to
Come
insert
on.
this anyway. A couple people I know have been bugging me to watch Outlander for like years, and I finally buckled, and I am almost at the end of the first season. It's wildly entertaining, but it is definitely like Harlequin romance in television form. It's hilarious.
A little spicy?
Yeah, it's like Game of Thrones for desperate housewives is how I would describe it.
All right.
It's really fun, though. It's very entertaining. Anyhow, Cobweb is the name of this movie. We don't obviously have a release date yet because the director's just been announced and nothing is running as it should. But
It's
this
produced
is
by
phenomenal.
Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg's.
I don't know if it's that Seth Rogen, though. I mean, I assume
No,
it is.
it is. Yeah.
Okay.
They worked on Preacher. Seth and Evan have been working in
genre for a while now.
Well, that's cool. Mostly I'm just excited about Bodine, though, because all we know about the story right now, it's a boy whose parents have always told him the voices he hears in the walls of his house are just his imagination. But he discovers the sounds are real.
If it's PG-13, I'm out right away.
You know me, I don't care if it's PG-13. The kind of things that scare me don't need an R rating to scare me. So very, very excited about that. And then the other thing that popped on my radar, I know most people are over American Horror Story at this point. I'm still giving them a chance. I actually kind of thought the Apocalypse one was entertaining. It was very different. I
think there was another one after that.
There was.
Right?
I just haven't watched it yet. That's why I can't speak to that one.
1984. It was that slasher summer camp one.
Yeah. Which seems like your deal. So
yeah, I didn't watch it though.
Well, we will. We'll watch it eventually. But this one supposedly takes place either on or near a beach. I love beaches. I love the movie The Beach.
Mm-hmm.
I love the Beach Boys. I love beachy drinks.
Beach balls.
Beach blankets. So I'm excited about that, even if many other people are not. In summation, watch all seasons of Dark before the third season comes out. Be on the lookout for Cobweb, and don't give up on American Horror Story yet. And then if you're bored with horror and you want to watch something that's mildly trashy for Desperate Housewives, just watch Outlander.
Also, I just read something confusing to me. FX greenlights American Horror Story spin-off called American Horror Stories.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that.
What is that?
I don't know what it is, but I did hear that they greenlit. I heard about it. That means that there was a headline in my Google News feed that said that they greenlit a spin-off series. And I think they had talked about it for a long time, and then there was debate whether they were going to greenlight it or not in light of the current situation, but they decided to move forward anyway.
We'll be talking about that in later weeks. But for now, I'm ready to get down.
Boogie?
In this week's edition of Kelly's
Cryptids and Conspiracies. Kelly's Cryptids and Conspiracies.
Are you crying?
Strasbourg on July 14th, 1518. By the way, this area is now a part of France, but it was not a part of France. It was just part of the Roman Empire at this time. It was kind of an independent area. I'll say so. Okay. A woman started dancing uncontrollably in the middle of the street. It's been hard to pin down a good visual description of this dancing, but from what I could find, it sounds like it included some jumping and some spinning and some twisting without any beat or tune, at least not that could be heard by onlookers. And this dancing went on for days. While we don't know what actually became of this woman, we do know that she started one hell of a trend because the dancing, much like Kelly's dancing, was contagious. 33 dancers accompanied this dancer Zero, but over the next month, there were hundreds of people who caught the bug, dancing through cries of pain and pleas for mercy, unable to stop even with the help of doctors, ultimately leading to the demise of many. And that, my friends, is the plague of 1518. The dancing plague. Just so you know, we're going to talk a little bit more because this is always referred to as the dancing plague, but it was only a dancing plague because there had been many dancing outbursts earlier in the Middle Ages. In fact, the earliest recorded is in like 700 and something. We've got a bunch of them leading up to this. This is just the most notable and large one and also the best documented one, so it's the one everybody talks about. So we'll dig into the others very briefly in a little while, but for now we're focusing on DP 1518. In the case of 1518, there was quite a bit of disease and famine confronting the area that was infected with this dancing plague. They'd been dealing with pretty extreme food shortages, smallpox, syphilis, and many other horrific things. This town was controlled by a very farming-dependent economy, specifically vineyards, hence my wine tribute.
Oh, what are you drinking today?
Some very dry rosé, not a fan of sweet rosé.
You're not going to shout out any specific brand?
You know what I'm going to do? Because maybe if you tweet this, link these people, they'll start giving me free wine. It's from this amazing mail order wine company called Naked Wines, which
heard of them.
Is like an angel funding group for small vineyards. So it's really cool because you give a little bit of money and you're helping good people, small businesses, and then they send you wine and life is good.
Okay.
But back in 1518, that's not how it worked. And in fact, it took a lot of effort effort to grow these grapes, and the people in Strasbourg were responsible for growing many of the grapes that led to wine in the area. Their economy was heavily dependent upon it. So even though in other parts of Europe the Renaissance was happening and everybody was pretty happy and good things were moving forward, in Strasbourg it was not the case, because we've got this farming economy that's dependent upon weather, which can't be controlled unless you believe that God's going to control it for you.
And this is a time before chemtrails.
Really crummy clergy members, okay, essentially controlling the town, and they have hoarded foods and supplies during the worst parts of droughts and famines that have been impacting the community.
Why would anyone do that?
Because they're assholes.
Glad that kind of stuff doesn't happen anymore.
Well, yeah, and like later down the road, those clergy people found other ways to occupy themselves and keep themselves entertained, but for now they were just hoarding things from the townspeople. They also took tons of taxes from the citizens. Some historical accounts even accuse, Byron, you're going to like this one, the clergy of engaging in forbidden sexual relationships with the nuns, then killing the offspring, sometimes in ritualistic murders, and burying them in the grounds around the Strasbourg churches.
Like the Magdalene laundries, but that I don't enjoy that.
Well, I mean, because it's spooky.
Sure.
I meant you'd like it because it was spooky.
Thanks for clarifying.
I mean, I know you don't actually like killing
I'm not
babies.
pro killing babies.
No. So some evidence has been found to support this, though mostly it's just kind of an urban legend. Who knows if it's true or not, but super spooky.
Probably was.
Shortly before 1518, 1517, there was a horrible cold snap, froze all the grapevines in the area, which, like I said, was their primary crop. Also destroyed most of the other smaller crops in the area. Then there was an outbreak of leprosy in the area and rumors that the bubonic plague was breaking out nearby. Then in the winter of 1517/early 1518, tons of people froze to death because they didn't have any means to stay warm and fed over the cold winter because all of the crops had died during the season before. So this was kind of the scene leading up to our dancing plague. These people did not have a lot to dance about. Things were grim.
Also, there's something called Evil May Day happened in 1517.
Ooh, do tell.
It's just the name of a riot that took place, a protest against foreigners living in London. Very xenophobic riot.
Oh, God, this sounds so similar to what we're dealing with now.
Yeah.
Okay. Our lady, our dancer zero, our patient zero, Frau, which just means Mrs. in German. And I know this is confusing because we're talking in German, but this is actually current day France, but they spoke German at the time okay. So Frau Trophäa started her mad dancing, jumping from foot to foot in the middle of the street on that July day. She danced all day. She danced all night. She passed out, slept in the middle of the street for a little while, got right back up, started dancing again. Originally, her husband was super upset and embarrassed. Sounds kind of like Sam's
this
reaction
sounds
to
like
my
you
dancing.
at a Michael Franti.
It does. At honestly, any concert. I dance the same at every concert. Whether I'm listening to Leon Bridges or the Avett Brothers or Michael Franti or Nine Inch Nails, I dance exactly the same way.
It hurts because I just placed you in the audience of every single one of those acts in my brain. And
I've been playing a lot of music for the girls. Like I played New Radicals the other day. I'm like, hey girls, these guys were really fun. Then I played Fastball. I'm like, yep, saw these guys too. These guys were
That's
great.
What I call music.
Some Sugar Ray,
Volume 3.
some Goo Goo Dolls.
Well, they are good, but only the first album. Okay, moving on.
Bob Dylan, Weezer. I mean, I was just going down the list, and the girls are like, "Oh my God, you've seen all of these?" I'm like, "Yep," and I danced just like this at all of those concerts, girls.
You're a plague at this point. Unrelenting.
Maybe I am the reincarnation of Frau Trophäa.
God.
Could be. Back we are to Frau Trophäa. After sleeping for a little while, she got back up, started dancing again.
Because you got to get up to get down, right?
That's a great one, Byron.
Thank you.
It's a really good one. Even though her husband was really embarrassed and upset at first, as her feet began to bruise, it began to appear that she really couldn't stop and she was actually suffering greatly. He started being concerned rather than embarrassed. So given the time and the medical technology, the officials in town, which also, as we described, were linked very closely with the church, decided that the clear cause of this situation was religious. They decided she was suffering because she had somehow displeased Saint Vitus. Now, who the hell is Saint Vitus? Oh, I shall tell you. He's the patron saint of epileptics and dancers, which seems like an odd combination.
There's a joke about ravers in there somewhere. That's actually one of my favorite rock clubs in New York City is St. Vitus.
Okay, can we just talk for a second about you saying that you have favorite rock clubs in New York City? Like you've been to 100 different rock clubs in New York City. I mean, you live in Montana.
Yeah, but I spend a lot of time in New York City. It's been a while, but I used to go for a couple weeks at a time.
I would not go to clubs. New York is the worst place. I watched Uncut Gems last week, and it was a great movie. But all the screaming, I'm like, everybody just yells there. Yeah, there's and honks, and it's just very stressful. I don't like that place.
It's just a small bar, but it's really cool. If you're in New York, I highly recommend you check it out. It's more of a metal club, but I actually saw an after party secret show of my favorite band, American Football, play there.
Well, look at you
3 in the morning.
That's okay. You can talk about esoteric bands and sound cooler. I'm totally fine talking about seeing Sugar Ray and Blink-182 and Fastball
every morning.
That's all right with me.
Hey folks, it's me, Byron, and I've got some explaining to do. I've been advised by our lawyer that even though I personally believe this, and I really do, I can no longer legally say that Spring Hill Jack coffee is the only known cure for COVID-19. However, I can say that drinking a brew made from their masterfully roasted beans can't hurt. Plus, it'll keep you alert in the event that a mob of coughing marauders come knocking on your door looking to loot you of loo tissue. That's toilet paper, of course. And now that that's all been bought, why don't you stockpile Spring Hill Jack coffee while you still can? Go to springhilljack.coffee or search Spring Hill Jack coffee on Amazon. That's SPRINGHEELD jack.coffee. You can thank me later. I legally can't say it will save your life.
Do you know they came out with a new album last summer? It was very exciting. Okay.
Okay.
I probably talked about it, didn't I? Okay.
Probably cut it from the show. I don't know.
Patron saint of epileptics and dancers.
St. Vitus.
Yep, St. Vitus. This Sicilian chap died as a martyr at the hands of the Roman emperors. They were co-emperors at the time. Oh, God. Diocletian and Maximian. I don't know. I wish Sam were here. Okay. So he died at the hands of those two folks, which made him a saint, but his assignment specifically to dancers and entertainers and those with epilepsy is a bit more confusing. Some people started claiming that the reason he became the patron saint of dancers was because he was able to resist the advances of super sexy dancers and still make it to heaven. However...
Wait. So people are like dancing, trying to pull him away from the white light.
From God.
Oh, all right.
And he persisted in remaining chaste, I guess. But when I did some research, he died when he was either 7 or 12, depending on which historical account you believe.
Which is how old in those days? Is that like at 25?
No. Definitely not old enough to have experienced any significant time of resisting sexy dancing.
Sure.
So I don't think that that's really why he was the patron saint of dancers. More likely, a lot of people broke out and danced in front of a statue of him. And I think for that reason, it's actually been attributed to a neurological disease, St. Vitus's dance, which some people think is actually epilepsy, but it's not. It's a neurological disease that's like closely linked to epilepsy. Mm-hmm. And I think then it just became like, oh, well, let's just make him the patron saint of dancing too, because those people make shit up all the time. So fun fact, he's also the patron saint of protecting you from lightning, from bear attacks, and from sleeping in.
Okay.
As Sam pointed out when I was discussing this with him, he's like, yeah, it's kind of like, January 2nd is Strawberry Ice Cream Day, and also...
There's something for everything.
Right, because you just run out of days, so you got to start, ascribing multiple things to multiple days, and that's kind of what happened here, I think. So, saints, they went the rounds, and they're like, well, shit, we don't have any more saints, and we got to put patron saint of not getting struck by lightning somewhere, so, hey, let's give it to Vitus. That seems like a good one. He is also the patron saint of the Kingdom of Serbia, from which my husband's ancestors hail. Mm-hmm. And I asked him about it, and he didn't know that. So apparently it must not matter that much to him. But maybe there's some Serbians listening that are more in touch with their roots and do know that. Sam seemed to only care about the patron saint of his family, which apparently is St. George, who's some angry guy that likes to go into a lot of battles. So when I said I dove into saints, that's what I meant. During this time, and in that area of Europe, it was common to believe that those who failed to remain in the good graces of St. Vitus would be cursed by being forced to dance without end. So given that belief and our heroine Trophy's behavior, it seemed like a no-brainer, so they didn't look for any other potential causes. Trophy was shuffled off to a shrine dedicated to St. Vitus to be healed, and that is where known info about her stops. Now again, many sources that I read talk about how she died, but when you really dig into it, there's no evidence that she actually died from dancing. There is no verifiable record of her after being ushered away to the shrine to be cured. Either St. Vitus cured her or she danced her way through the shrine and broke it all down. Who knows? But while Trophy seems to have been patient zero, the explanations for her dancing don't help much, whether it was trying to piss her husband off or just being a little bit loopy, maybe doing some drugs, who knows, but none of those explanations are going to help us explain what happened because this dance spread. There were men, women, and children taken with the uncontrollable urge to dance. Even though they kept dancing and dancing and dancing, it seemed as though it was being forced upon them. These dancers were really miserable. Before Frau Treya stopped, there were 34 people dancing with her. And over the course of the following month, there were 400 that became involved in this crazy dancing. This is where the dance separates from my dancing, because I love dancing and it never hurts anybody, my kind of dancing, but this was not as pleasant an experience for people. Local authorities, again, remember, closely tied to the clergy, they tried their hand at solving the problem. Byron, how would you solve this problem if
Big
you
old
were
bucket
facing
of ice water. Say, come on, guys, break it up.
Okay. I'd probably handle it with sleeping gas. Isn't that a thing? I know there's laughing gas. I'm
I don't know what I do.
Well, I'll tell you what they did, because again, we're closely linked to the church with our officials in this city at this time.
Holy water hose?
No, it's really, oh God. They decided they probably just had quote unquote hot blood and needed to dance it out.
Okay.
So,
I mean, that Sam has probably given you that assumption at some point.
Oh no, he never encourages me to dance more. Never, ever. They decided to clear out 2 big buildings along with a grain market. They built a wooden stage for the dancers, and then they brought in musicians. They believed, or at least hoped, that eventually the people would purge themselves of all their dancing urges and they'd get back to normal. This plan severely backfired because people began to collapse from heart attacks and strokes, with many dying. Wow. Death count is very difficult to verify, but a significant portion of those 400 people did die. Pretty scary.
And you said they had hot blood. It's interesting. Around the same time, starting, I guess, a couple years before and ending in 1551, there was something called sweating sickness, which was a plague, some sort of unknown hantavirus.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't know exactly what that has to do with this at all, because there was a lot of different sicknesses. There was sewage everywhere. What we were eating was not very well preserved. People were often sick. Maybe something that they ate. What sickness could you have that would affect you in a mental way, other than something that would cause you to hallucinate or be delirious?
Well, that's a really good question to ask, Byron. And in fact, there are a couple different explanations tied to that perspective. One of them, though it is a mental impact, one theory hypothesizes that ergot was consumed by the people. Now, what is ergot? Sam, if you were here, would laugh at us for not automatically knowing what ergot was.
Yes,
but it was not altogether uncommon in this time for people to eat bread made from rye flour that had been contaminated with a mold/fungal disease called ergot.
Sure.
And ergot is basically like organic LSD. So symptoms similar to LSD, and also it was known to cause convulsions. However, unless all the people continued eating that contaminated bread regularly over the full time they were dancing, this doesn't...
How quick does it go through your system?
At most, it's going to impact you a couple of days. So that really doesn't explain much.
And they actually, I think, believed that ergot poisoning was responsible for some of the behavior during the Salem witch trials.
Yes, however, that is a misnomer, and further research from the more reputable historians actually indicates that it was almost entirely political in nature.
Oh, okay. Well, fine then.
Sorry. There are a lot of sources that talk about that, though. This was my rabbit holing.
All right.
We talked about the St. Vitus theory, right, which is obviously what they ran with. But at the time, there were also beliefs that this could be because of just good old-fashioned demonic possession. And I love that theory. But it doesn't really hold a lot of water either, because it doesn't make sense why a demon would possess all of these people to dance and not have them, puking or breaking crosses or screaming swear words or, doing terrible, horrible, awful things.
Yeah, and if you want to hear more of those horrible, awful things, listen to episode 49 and 50, History of Possession and Famous Possessions.
Yeah, I got to do more on possession. It's
we
just
got to
so
dive
much
back
fun.
in. They were good stories.
We really need to. The theory that actually is most commonly accepted now, which is kind of a cop-out in some ways. People make fun of my corner of the investigation world by saying, oh, well, if something doesn't make sense, you just say it's aliens or you just say it's ghosts. Well, I think if something doesn't make sense to the medical community, they just say it's mass hysteria.
That was my other guess.
Yep. So this one's a little bit tough for me because there are so many articles referring to this as a mass hysteria incident. I was almost ready to write that off as a potential explanation just because it sounds like so much of a catch-all cop-out. But there's a pretty cool scientific research paper that came out of the Journal of the Royal Society of Medicine talking about a few different cases, and they at least ascribe a more scientific sounding name to it. They call it mass psychogenic illness. And this paper claims that it's underreported, it poses a significant health and social problem, that it has occurred in a lot of different places. So one case that is referred to pretty commonly in a lot of the dancing plague stories is the situation in 1976 in Mount Pleasant, Mississippi. 15 school children fell down and started writhing around in convulsions. They had no idea what was going on. Keep in mind, 1976, okay? But at one point, a third of the school's 900 students stayed home for fear of being bewitched. Yeah, we're still not dealing with a lot of rational thought current day.
I feel like there was a case like that we talked about in the early days of this podcast.
Oh, there have been cases of this all over. And in fact, we'll link the scientific article to the show notes of this episode at Frightday.com, of course. But a lot of different interesting circumstances surrounding this type of thing. Now, it hasn't been studied enough that I think we have enough information about it. It's hard because the paranormal part of my brain wants to say, okay, well, yeah, this can't be explained by anything else. Like once they rule out hallucinogens, gas leaks, and, those types of things, what's left? Well, there's no explanation. So they just use this like blanket, there's some type of hysteria. These people are all acting crazy together.
Yeah. What I really enjoy about this is the risk factors that they're saying are childhood or adolescence, which makes sense, intense media coverage, possible extroversion, being neurotic, or having a low IQ. Those are all great reasons that someone would join in on something like this, the fear of being left out.
Yeah, but all of us fear that. And I wish that everybody jumped up and clown danced with me when I dance, but that doesn't happen.
At least one guy high on acid will try to join you, and Sam will slowly nudge him away from you.
Yeah, it's very funny. Sam still doesn't think that I can handle myself at concerts. I'll never forget the time that we were in the pit for Dropkick Murphys.
Sure.
And my strategy in big concerts is always to wear long maxi dresses.
Don't know why.
Flip-flops.
Yeah, why is that?
And then stand on the ends of my dress. So like literally if I start getting tipped over, as long as I can keep my feet planted, it'll like pull me back up.
There's no logic in this. There's about as much.
It worked. I went to like 8 years running of Sasquatch and did very well with that. But
I don't
Sam
care.
did not appreciate my approach.
It doesn't make
and
any
there was
logical
a guy that was,
sense.
I can't remember if I've told this story in the podcast or
Well,
not,
you
but there was this
don't
guy that was
need to.
crowd surfing over us during Dropkick Murphys.
Yeah.
And I was fine. It doesn't, typically you get...
We talked about this on episode 100, I think. I think we talked about it in like one of our Q&A episodes. Sam assaulted a man.
It was so great. He was just like, I'm like, Sam, I'm fine. Relax.
All right.
He just hauls off and punches the poor guy.
Well,
anyhow,
he would be definitely one to punch this group of people who won't stop dancing. And is it like sunrise to sunset, like they fall asleep at night, or is it just like constant
so
pulse?
some of the people danced all the way through, like literally didn't stop, which, you know, given the famine of the time, it's hard to even understand how they had enough caloric intake to fuel that kind of physical movement. Others would take brief sleeps and then get right back up again and dance. It seemed like they were completely out of control, like they weren't doing something that they wanted to do. So
you were saying something
about mass psychogenic illness. Yeah, that's the scientific term for mass hysteria. And while it does carry a little bit more logic behind it, it's still pretty much like, yeah, we don't know what causes it. It happens a lot. It's a pretty big deal. More people need to report it. We got to figure out what's going on. Best cures are to separate the people from the outbreak. Well, yeah, no shit. Yeah, the whole thing is very, very, very interesting. Part of me thinks that it's in some way connected to, what's the theory, Byron? I can never remember the name of this, but it's like the threshold theory about, okay, the first school shooting that happens, it takes a huge threshold to push that kid over the edge. But once that kid does it, then the threshold for the next group is a little bit lower. And then once the next group of kids do it, then the threshold's a little bit lower and becomes more normalized over time. So part of me wonders if this mass hysteria thing is linked to that. The fact that people were actually dying seems crazy. Most of the more recent situations linked to mass hysteria don't involve death. So this one seems pretty severe. However, you could make the argument, because life sucked so much then, that maybe they were like, fuck it, gonna dance myself to death, whatever.
You think it was a choice, or maybe it was an involuntary action, a response of the body to living in such horrific sadness.
It could be. It could be. So there is a professional dancer who put together a performance that premiered a little over a year ago, Byron, who is Frau Trophea. We'll obviously have a link to this performer's website in the show notes of this episode of Frightday.com. But this was her statement, putting into context what she thinks was behind the dancing plague. It was a protest about life at the time. The hunger, the poverty, the diseases, the misogynist mindset, the breakdown of society, the corrupt church of the Middle Ages. Frau Trophea tried to defeat all these through her dance and save herself and her soul through the trance-like state. Now, I don't know.
Sounds like a Lady Gaga concert to me.
It does, and I feel like protests are a bit of a privilege afforded to modern society more than it was to, not that there weren't protests back in these days, but the idea that this is how a protest would manifest and that somebody would protest in that context, who knows, maybe it was. But then it's a little hard to write it all off as that, because it became men, women, and children all together. Like, it wasn't just this females protesting against how awful things were. But perhaps it was a collective, even if subconscious, protest against the clergy. Who knows? I will tell you this, Byron, and this took the most digging of all. My favorite theory, my very, very favorite theory of all connected to the dancing plague, emerges from a woman named Elizabeth de Clare. I found an article she wrote in January of this year, and I found it very fascinating. I'm going to read a quote from it right now. In 1518, the year of the dancing plague, Saturn and Pluto were conjunct.
Oh no, here we go.
Saturn governs structure, while Pluto rules power and transformation. The two link up every 33 to 38 years, each time in a different sign. This year, Saturn and Pluto will align in Capricorn on January 12th, with the optimistic sun joining them the following day. The last time Saturn and Pluto were conjunct in Capricorn was the year 1518.
The year of the dancing.
In the midst of the Italian Renaissance, which was a rebirth of learning, literature, art, culture, and apparently death by dancing. This is quite literally once-in-a-lifetime astrology, amplified by a full moon lunar eclipse in Cancer on Friday the 10th, the first full moon of the year. Even if you don't believe in astrology, which, hello, planets exist and orbit accordingly, I bet you can agree that we live in weird, wild times. Check your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen, because we're in for a ride. Now, this was before COVID. Kind of crazy. So maybe modern day's manifestation of the dancing plague is COVID. or something.
Okay, so you're saying the alignment of the planets is causing some...
Well, I'm just saying it's a bit of a coinky-dink that this woman wrote this article at the beginning of the year before COVID was an exploded thing.
Okay.
And said, hey, the last time this alignment happened was 1518 when the dancing plague broke out, and it's happening again, so expect something crazy. And guess what? She was right.
Some very viral TikTok dance challenges. This all makes sense.
Do you know how absolutely inferior I feel that I cannot master any of those?
Have you tried?
No, not really.
There you go.
I haven't spent that much time on it, but I need to spend more time
no,
on it.
you don't. And Kelly, thank you so much for that report.
Oh my God, you're so welcome.
All right.
No, it's everybody be careful when you're dancing.
Yeah, of course.
Don't let the clergy get you under their thumb.
Mm-mm.
Try and stay away from the leprosy and the bubonic plague.
Great idea, always.
And yeah, read up on some of the other crazy hysteria situations that have happened, because guess what? There are plenty of them. Do you know who likes to dance, Byron?
Who?
Teenagers like to dance. You ever see
teenage.
that movie Footloose?
Yeah, and I'm familiar with the desire to dance as a teen.
Oh, did you have a desire to dance as a teen?
No, I just know people did.
Oh.
It seems like the troubled teenagers always have it worse in horror films.
Yeah, they do. They're the ones that die for sure.
Or maybe they live. But either way, we'll talk about that as we review The Wretched.
I'm sending you another meme.
Oh, don't. Please don't do that.
We hope you're enjoying your visit here this evening. Now, on with the show.
Look at it. Look at that meme.
Nah, I'm good.
Look at that meme I just sent you. It's a good one.
All right, well, let's see what we got. Okay. The Wretched is a 2019 American supernatural horror film written and directed by Brett Pierce and Drew T. Pierce. Following his parents' separation, a rebellious teenage boy, Ben, is sent to live with his father for the summer and work at the local marina in order to gain some form of discipline. The idyllic tourist town offers little solace for him. However, as he is forced to deal with the local privileged teens and his father's new girlfriend, Ben's problems grow increasingly disturbing when he makes a chilling discovery about the family renting the house next door. A malevolent spirit from the woods has taken hold of the parents and starts playing a sinister game of house, preying upon the children and wiping away any trace of their existence. Ben's suspicions of the supernatural horror go unheeded, and he launches a perilous crusade in order to put an end to the skin-walking witch's reign of terror. Okay, number one film in freaking America. This is so interesting to me.
Interesting. Those are the words you and Sam both use to describe things you don't like.
No, that's okay. Well, I will get this out of the way. The Wretched is not very much a Byron film, even though it is a film about witches, and you know how much I love witches. But that doesn't mean it's a bad movie, and I'm going to review it objectively.
Interesting.
You are aware, number one film in America.
Well, yeah, that's because nobody's going to see movies, and this one's playing at the drive-in, which is like the only place people feel comfortable going right now.
So cool. 45 drive-in theaters this weekend. Put it at the top.
B, did you hear that they're building a drive-in just south of us?
No, that's very exciting. I wonder
it's very exciting. We'll have to start making some trips down for it.
I wonder what
it
they're gonna
opens
play.
at the beginning of June.
Really? For reals?
Mm-hmm.
Premiered at 2019's Fantasia Film Festival. I believe I missed this at the Telluride Horror Show. I miss a lot of things, and I'm sorry for that.
Yeah, shouldn't have missed this one.
Interesting thing about the Pierce family. Their father, he did some work on horror films early in his career as well. He was actually the special effects guy on the 1981 classic The Evil Dead.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Worked with Sam Raimi, who is another Michigan guy. This film was shot in Michigan. around Almena and Northport, which are near the Pierces. I believe one of their in-laws live in that area. So really interesting, small project, family affair. The mother and stepfather actually did craft services for the shoot, and the dad worked with them, not in special effects, but basically as a PA on the film, picking up the actors from the airports, stuff like that. It's really, really interesting.
That is really cool.
And it's a great story, you know, the idea that this little film gets the recognition of being the #1 film in America. Last time I'll talk about it, but like in a season that was gonna be a blockbuster summer. We had a new Fast and the Furious movie. We had that new Saw movie.
I hate those things.
Black Widow.
I don't like those
in
either.
the Marvel universe. Like a ton of huge films, but somehow this guy, due to a horrific pandemic.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not that much of a mystery, B.
Yeah, we know exactly why this happened. But yeah, I think it's just a really interesting story.
It is an interesting story. I think that the movie itself is also an interesting story. It's a lot of fun. It's just, it's not super serious. It clearly doesn't take itself super seriously, which, as you know, unless we're talking like top-notch best horror movies there are, it really needs to be good about not taking itself seriously. Please hold 1 minute.
Yeah.
Hey girls, can you please not yell?
What are they doing?
Thank you. I love you.
What were they yelling?
Yeah, I don't know what they're yelling. I don't pay attention anymore. But Sam drove in to go, I don't know, something. So the girls are here, and that's why I have to have the door open to make sure they don't like die or something.
Yeah, that's a good idea. 1985 is when this thing starts. We've got ourselves a babysitter cold open. Babysitting is an underpaid job, and it's extremely dangerous. I don't know why we're still letting the youths of America do this kind of stuff, because you always...
I totally agree. I really try to pay well as a babysitter.
And you don't...
Yeah, because
trap any babysitters in the basement with witches at all, right?
Traditionally, no. I did once.
I would say The Wretched is the film who has done something the quickest to make this a Kelly Nope film.
Yeah, tried real hard.
In the basement, there is a witch eating the face of a little girl. Pretty amazing little shot.
Face.
The movie flashes, we see the sign of this witch, this V with a line through it. But then it says 5 days ago. Does that mean 5 days ago in modern time? Is that?
I think that it jumped to current day before it said 5 days ago.
Are you sure? Maybe I missed something, but I thought that was really an interesting way to place time.
Well, I think, so the idea was what's going on happens every 35 years.
Okay.
The current story definitely takes place in
modern
2020.
Times.
Yeah. That part I can't really speak to because I did not see that flash up, and I apologize for that.
That's fine.
I'm really sorry.
It's okay.
So
Ben's having trouble. His family is splitting apart, and he is spending some time with his father.
And he's kind of, I think a lot of teenagers have a bit of pent-up aggression. He's got a lot because he's pretty pissed about the divorce that his parents are apparently going through.
I don't know about pent-up aggression. He isn't actively displaying any sort of aggression. His father and him have a conversation about why he broke his arm, and he's not quite ready to talk about that. But
there's some aggression, especially shortly into the movie.
I guess you were talking about when he calls his dad's new girlfriend some bitch. I think is that?
Yeah, some bitch. I can't even remember if he said you're sleeping with.
Yeah, he's not super thrilled with the woman that his father is dating now.
Not a fan at all, actually, and I think is about ready to let loose because of it. But he does say these words while he is intoxicated. And I have to back up a second because we've got kind of one of those traditional teenage party scenes that happens in this movie.
Yes.
There was a moment that reminded me quite a bit of, and bear with me here, Byron.
Yes.
Reminded me of The Kingsman 2, which Sam and I watched
have not
recently.
Seen this, no.
So The Kingsman was a real fun flick. The Kingsman 2, slightly less believable, though the second half of it was way more fun than the first half.
Okay.
Anyhow, in that movie, we've got our protagonist, Edgerton, whatever, the kid that played freaking Elton John.
Wait, what are you talking about?
Yes, you'll understand. Hold on.
Okay.
And he's got all these buddies, and there's just this casual scene where his buddy's just smoking meth on the couch, just like super, like the way that you would see somebody smoking pot in your average film. But this just normal kid, and it's like, oh, no big deal, it's just smoking meth. And I'm like, what? And I kind of felt that way, not quite as extreme, but I kind of felt that way in this movie when the kid's like, oh yeah, I broke my arm, breaking into my neighbor's house trying to steal some Vicodin.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Well, I guess no.
I'm like, okay.
I don't believe
like
that.
This kid struck me as kind of like your pretty good kid just having a rough time, and then suddenly like I'm like, wait a second.
I took it as that was his rock bottom, and he's better now. From what I
Which
could
is
tell.
probably the case. I just thought it was a bit of a casual drop.
Sure. Ben
for
played by
something that's
John Paul Howard.
decently significant.
I understand.
Not as big as doing meth, but decently significant,
Sure.
So
I see what you're saying. I didn't take him for that kind of bad boy guy,
Right, which is what was so confusing about it. And I'm like, okay.
Speaking of confusing, one of the things that really didn't work for me with this entirely was the bouncing back and forth with the tone. You mentioned these high school party scenes, and then it's like bouncing back and forth between like what's going on at the neighbor's house. They're playing almost like cinematic adventure music at certain points, and then we're seeing like a creaky cracky witch like biting the face off a kid.
I watched this with Sam, and Sam said it kind of reminded him of Silver Bullet.
Silver Bullet, the 80s film?
Yeah.
I don't think I know that one.
I think it's a werewolf one, I believe. But it's a Stephen King, I think.
Sure.
I think I saw it forever and ever and ever ago. I don't remember it particularly well, but I do get what he was saying just in terms of like a general 80s vibe and kind of the fun tone that goes with it. And that was the overarching experience for me in this movie, which is, I think, one of the reasons that I enjoyed it.
I mean, there's some really cool stuff. Like at the beginning, the Vavitch comes crawling out of a...
I like that now we say Vavitch.
Crawls out of the dead corpse of a deer, almost like the Predator, or as the young Dr. Giggles in that movie.
Oh.
But it's like...
I was actually just thinking more about Leonardo DiCaprio and Revenant, but that's okay.
Or maybe like Luke Skywalker out of a Tauntaun.
Oh yeah, that works too.
It's like the gore is very visceral and intense, and then we go to like a shot of the boy having a heart-to-heart with a girl and then barfing, almost like a Disney movie.
It did feel a little bit Hannah Montana.
And I think that was the only thing that really rubbed me wrong, because it's visually a good movie and the story's interesting. And one of the elements, and I briefly mentioned this in the synopsis, that I had never seen before, is the witch taking the children and then removing the memories of that child from her loved one's memory. I thought that was really, really interesting.
I thought it was really interesting too, and it may have been done before. I don't remember seeing that in a movie, at least in this way. I thought it was very cool, especially the way it was utilized for a bit of a Shyamalan towards the end.
Yes.
And you know me, I'm always a sucker for a Shyamalan.
Yeah, and I don't know if we should talk too much about that.
No, I don't think we should. I don't think we
yes.
should say anything more about it. I've probably said too much.
I think you may have, but that's okay.
I apologize, everybody.
I love a symbol. I love a witch, but for some reason there wasn't...
You like that upside down A?
I do like that, but there wasn't enough ritual in this witch,
Oh, you needed more ritual.
I needed a little bit more history. Like, I know we've heard this as a thousands-year-old witch, and we don't really get much of that history that brings in the spooky, like, rustic witch,
Oh, okay. So you're really more wanting a Vitch.
I want a Vitch. I want a vibe. And I don't think that this Vitch...
I don't know. I like this lady because you know what she did?
What?
She had a lot of jerky movements. And you know me and jerky movements.
Yeah, I called her creaky cracky because her body is just constantly like... the whole time. Even when she takes that shower, remember she comes out and she's still creaky cracking? Yeah, the whole dang time.
Yeah. The thing is, though, I'll never not be a sucker for
Fast
a jerky
jerks.
movement.
I know.
That's just my jam.
We'll have to play Silent Hill on Twitch one of these days, when you can come over.
I actually would play that. I've been afraid to play it because it seems so overwhelmingly spooky to me.
Speaking of spooky, I just remembered there was a stick bundle switcheroo that was fun and then quickly extinguished my excitement when the CG leg grab happened.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's fair. I understand that.
And also,
I won't hate you for it.
A lot of the scares in this were due to someone not moving in the background and then suddenly like moving, and you're like, oh, they were there the whole time.
Well,
a handful of times, and then do like some sort of string hit in the score. That's
but I think it was embracing this slightly cheesy tone of your 1980s teenage-oriented horror flickaroos.
I guess, which brings me to my next comparison. This felt a lot like Fright Night to me.
That from what I understand,
is that a
reference? It's been
reference?
a long time since I've seen that one. It does have a similar vibe. I think.
Except we don't get any sort of assistance from a charismatic outside source. But
that's true.
In that sense, it's not very fun. I mean, we have the crush that he has that is helping him investigate this situation, who's like looking on Wikipedia with him.
Right, but then it becomes like a big part of the story because...
I mean...
Well, I guess, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
Never mind.
Can't do that.
Sorry.
I don't know.
If I can't say anything more about those things, I don't know how much more I can say other than my final thoughts.
Hit me with those final thoughts.
From the get-go, it was very clear this wasn't going to be a movie that I dove into as an immersive, emotional, character-driven experience. This was just going to be a fun, summery horror flick. And I think that's probably, aside from the fact that it basically has a monopoly on the market right now, I think that's one of the reasons it's been so popular, especially at the drive-in. Like, this is kind of, in my opinion, the perfect movie for a drive-in movie. Fun, it's spooky, you don't have to think that much. My one critique is there are probably a few too many relationships in it, like different characters interacting to the point where it's not just a matter of you can't get that invested in them, but I feel like it gets a little confusing sometimes. And granted, I'm easily confused as well. But, it's not like Dark, where it's the kind of movie that you need to pay attention to for an overall sense. This is a movie that you shouldn't have to pay that close attention to in order to follow some of those connections. So I thought that was a little out of sync with the tone of the rest of the movie. But aside from that, this was really fun. Lighthearted. It had some really fun moments of teen cheesy angst that brought back a lot of 80s tropes. And to me, that was a good thing. I thought the acting, none of it was standout, oh my God, incredible award-winning performances. But I also thought all of it was very much in tone with the movie, which I appreciated a great deal. This is a great movie for an easy Friday night where you just want to unwind from the weekend and unwind from the week and watch a fun horror movie that's not going to leave you destroyed afterwards, nor is it going to make your brain hurt that much. It's just a fun experience. Thinking in terms of some of the other movies we've already seen this year, but also thinking in terms of some of the pretty awful movies that Byron makes me watch sometimes.
Oh, come on.
I think this is a solid, you should watch it. I give The Wretched 6.1 jerky neck creaks.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this film is very slick.
Ooh, slick.
I agree with you, Kelly. I think the story gets a little bit muddled at a certain point. All of the performances were fine. There was nothing really wrong with this movie. As a producer, if I was going to put on the Byron McKoy producer hat... and
that hat ruins your enjoyment of so many movies.
Sometimes. I would have maybe toned down the violence and leaned into the PG-13 nature of it. I think a lot of the stuff that was really effective didn't even involve any gore. Like there's that shot from the top of the stairs to the porch where the Vitch-possessed mom from next door is looking for her son. That shot was really, really effective. And she does a great job of being very scary. And there's another scene where someone is wearing a creepy deer skeleton mask in front of an altar, which was totally creepy. I like that a lot. Mm-hmm. But there's like bodies hanging from the ceiling, and that's totally unnecessary in a fun energy horror film. So I don't know. It just tonally was up and down for me. The scale tipped more into that teen side. And I think if they would have leaned into that, it would have been a more successful film. But that doesn't mean it's a bad film. And I'm happy that a horror film directed by two seemingly very nice gentlemen from Michigan has been so successful. I think that this is awesome. Again, not necessarily a Byron film, but I am going to give The Wretched 5.5 skinny dip dares.
Oh, that was funny.
And those are our thoughts on The Wretched, which is available now on VOD everywhere or drive-in theaters if you got one of those near you. Check your schedule. I agree with you, Kelly. That would be one of the better ways to watch this film.
Yay.
And once you've seen this, let us know what you thought. Hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at Frightday. You could leave a comment below this episode in the show notes at frightday.com. Send us an email, contact@frightday.com, or let's have a full discussion in our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Frightday. A handful of new folks over there this week.
Yay!
It's, again, the only reason that I have Facebook. So.
Yeah, I think that's true for a lot of us now.
We do have a Discord channel, though, too, and I've been meaning to tell Sam because I know he has totally abandoned the platform of Facebook. But
yeah, he has.
Maybe Discord is a happier, less corrupted platform, and maybe he'll enjoy that. But yeah, Discord channel, maybe I'll throw the links in our show notes for that as well if you want to hang out with us there. Do you know what Discord is, Kelly, or is it over your head?
I do, because I work with teenagers.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And then I can make them think I'm really cool, and I'm like, oh yeah, Discord. You guys have some cool meetups on Discord this week? Sweet.
Then you do the Gangnam Style dance, and everyone's like, oh.
No, I do the Macaroon Chacaron.
If you like our show and want to help us make it even better, grab something spooky at shop.frightday.com. Kelly, I found a place that makes robes. And at some point... No, I'm not talking about bathrobes. I'm talking about ritualistic robes. And at some point...
Oh, like Eyes Wide Shut robes?
I mean, sure, why not? That is some of the merch you could be looking forward to. Not quite there yet. We've got t-shirts, we've got hoodies, tote bags.
What color are these robes going to be, Byron?
I'm leaning into the forest green motif of our branding, and I think that might be fun.
I like that.
Yeah, it's pretty
I like
good.
that. Is there going to be an emblem, or are these going to be like...
Well, I have been working on that new logo at the top of the Frightday group.
Yeah.
I think it might work. But until then, we got pins, we got patches, we got the Roswell incident on cassette tape, lots of stuff at shop.frightday.com. When you support us there, it keeps this thing rolling. Another place for that, and for folks who may want us to keep talking, even though we're going to stop here in a second, we got plenty more episodes of lots of different programs involving us at patreon.com/Frightday, because when you support us, when you subscribe to Frightday Screamium, you get access to bonus episodes of Captain Kelly's Cryptids and Conspiracies, Byron's Serial Corner, The Writer's Room, Cinema Autopsy, exclusive live streams, 15% off everything at shop.frightday.com, and the warm fuzzy feelings that come along with helping Kelly buy more rosé. You're supporting her habit, and look what you've done, you monster. Even just $1 helps us move quickly into this being more of a viable career path for us, because honestly, I would like to quit doing everything else. Getting a hold of the potential guests that we have on the show that took some sleuthing, and you know what? If I had all day to do that kind of stuff, the show would be amazing. There could be more of it and higher quality, and if you have a little extra money, I know times are tight, we could do this thing.
Let's do it together.
A lot of you are subscribed to Frightday Screamium, but a couple new people joined up recently. I want to say hello, welcome to Dale and...
Hey, Dale?
Kenneth.
Oh, I love Kenneth.
Well, don't like him more than Dale. That's not fair.
It's just one of my favorite names. I'm sure Dale is wonderful as well. I just like the name Kenneth.
I hope you're enjoying all the perks involved with being a Screamium subscriber, and thank you guys so much. Your support means the world to us. It really does. But most helpful of all, leave a review for us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever you're listening to podcasts, because that's the best way to get us in new ears and up charts. We have been sliding up the film reviews chart, which is surprising.
Ooh.
I really do appreciate that. We also are on Spotify. If that is the platform for you, it seems like things are heating up over there with that $100 million Joe Rogan deal.
Yeah, they don't have any more money to give us, damn
Maybe
it.
thousands. I don't know. It seems like chump change, but if that's how you want to listen to us, Spotify is an option. Next week, I think they're running out of horror films, but we got Scare Package coming up in the future, and I mean, we could do a staff pick too. We haven't done that. That would be a good introduction to that new opening that we have, would be us to just
Close
pick...
Encounters of the Third Kind.
That's not a horror film at all. But
God damn it is too.
Kelly, where are you going to be until next week?
On Twitter at Kelly Frightday. I'm going to be on my email, kelly@frightday.com. And I might be on Instagram.
Who knows?
Captain Kelly Jennifer.
How's that mysterious Instagram thing working out for you? Should I go private too?
I mean, it's hard because there's sometimes that I want to tweet things like, I don't know, that other people would see. But the fact that I have stuff from the kids up there makes me feel like I really shouldn't.
Gotta protect the monsters.
It's a push-pull. Really what I need to do is have 2 different accounts. I'm just too lazy.
There you go. Maybe. Well, I was going to say maybe I'll give you access to the actual Frightday Instagram account, but I don't know if that would be a good idea.
Ooh,
I'm at Byron
I
McKoy
like that.
on Twitter and Instagram, byron@frightday.com. That's my email address. Make sure to get your True Tales of Terror in. Email them to kelly@frightday.com. And until next Frightday, I'm Byron.
I'm Kelly. Stay away from your neighbor's Vicodin.
Oh, great idea.
You
have been listening to an Audio Wool original, produced by Byron McKoy, theme music provided by Cemeteries. For more programs like this, visit audiowool.co.